Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary and today's video is going to be my July wrap-up.
I should have told you that I loved you one more time.
I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the stats for the month. I also participated in 2 readathons during the month of July. So I participated in the tarot card readathon and I also participated in the Summerween readathon, and I have vlogs for both of those. So for the books that I read during those readathons, I will mention them and talk about my star rating, but I'm not going to go too in depth. So hopefully this video will not be too terribly long, but let's just jump into the stats. So as always, I have my laptop in my lap with my stats on it. Okay. I read 11 books in the month of July. And I read 3,553 pages, which is like over 1,000 pages less than I read last month. And it's pretty low page count wise. I read a lot of things that were shorter in July, but I'm not mad about it. I did read books by authors from 3 to 4 different countries. One of the authors, I read a collection of short stories by her, and I looked on her bio and it said that she was born in the UK, but she grew up sort of all over, and a lot of her stories have to do with being Nigerian and taking place in Nigeria. So I'm not sure if she I know she lived in Nigeria for a time growing up, but I don't really know where she considers herself from. So tentatively 4 countries, but also just 3 based on where people are born. I hope that makes sense. I didn't really know how else to really address that. I did read 1 book published in 1975. 3 books published in 2017, 5 books published in 2018, 1 book published in 2019, 1 book published in 2020, and 1 book published in 2021. I also read books by 6 male authors and 5 female authors, which is different for me. I usually read primarily female authors, so I just thought that was interesting that I read more by men this month than I did by women. I did read 4 books from authors of color, which is, again, always something that I'm looking to improve upon. I read 2 YA books, 8 adult books, and 1 new adult book. As far as genres, I did read 1 nonfiction, 3 contemporary romance, 1 fantasy, 2 magical realism books, 2 mystery/thrillers, and 2 horror books. I also read 2 novellas and 1 short story collection. I read 7 books off of my own TBR. And I physically read 5 of my books. I listened to 4 audiobooks and I read 2 ebooks. As far as my star ratings go, I did not have any 1 stars this month, but I did have 1 2-star, 4 3 stars, 2 4 stars, and 4 5 stars, which is an average of 3.8 stars, which again is lower than last month, but not by a ton. So I'm feeling okay about that. And without further ado, we're just gonna jump into the books that I read. So the first book that I picked up in July, I actually got for free on Kindle Unlimited, and that is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, which is a new adult contemporary romance. And it follows this girl, Jordan, who is 19, she's a college student, and something happens to where she and her boyfriend are forced to move into her boyfriend's dad's house. And it's a romance between Jordan and her boyfriend's dad, which sounds kind of convoluted. A lot of people really love this book. I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was good in some respects, but I've mentioned this before when I talk about romance, I have to be interested in a male love interest to care about the romance, or I have to be interested in one of the love interests. I don't know how to explain it, but I have to, if the love interest isn't my type, I don't care about the book, because I read romance, I guess, to feel butterfly feelings, and I didn't feel them for Pike. I know a lot of people really love him, but he was a little too controlling for me. He was a little too alpha male, aggressive, typically masculine, I guess. And I like a little more soft.
That's not me. Act like a waste man. That's not me.
Sex and a girl now.
That's not me.
I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but I'm definitely more into the soft boy thing than I am into the I'm a masculine, manly man construction worker. You can't wear that shirt out because I don't want people to look at you. It's just not my thing. So I am interested in reading more from her. This one just was not a favorite for me. So the next 2 books that I read, I did read for Summerween. So again, I will link that vlog. So if you would like to watch it and hear more in-depth thoughts on them, you can. But the first book that I finished for Summerween was The Chain by Adrian Mckinty. I almost wanted to call him something completely different. Adrian Mckinty. This is a mystery thriller, and it is essentially about a chain of kidnappings. And so the way it works is your child gets kidnapped, and to get your child back, you have to pay a ransom and kidnap someone else's kid. And that's how the chain keeps going. I thought this was a really unique concept and a really interesting premise for a book, and especially for a mystery or a thriller. It definitely kept me on the edge of my seat. I really liked how our main character was going through something else. Just found out she has cancer again, and so she's dealing with that. I also liked that we got some backstory for the like person who started the chain, if that makes sense, and the way that the author led you to who it was. It wasn't subtle by any means, so if you prefer like subtle clues, this one might not be for you, but I did give this book 4 stars. I thought it was really interesting. And then the next book that I read for Summerween was Ring Shout by Djeli Clark, which is a like fantasy horror kind of book. And it essentially is set in like an alternate universe where the KKK is actually made up of these monsters called Ku Kluxes, and we're following a group of women who are monster hunters. Part of this book is written, I call it in dialect. I've recently found out that that's not actually what it's called, but it's where they write the book like it's how someone is speaking. And I understand why it happened for this book, but that's something that I find really, really jarring and sometimes hard to read. So it did take me a little bit longer to read this book. It's a very short book. It's less than 200 pages. It's one of the novellas that I read. But I do recommend this. I think it's the type of book that is important to read and it's like very unique too for the genre. So I gave this one 4 stars as well. And again, if you want to hear more in-depth thoughts on either of those, I do have a vlog and I'll link it. The next 4 books that I read as part of the Tarot Readathon. So again, I have a vlog for this if you want more thoughts on any of these. But the first book I read for that was a mystery thriller. And so I chose The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And this, I ended up giving 3 stars. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed by this. I just thought it was too long, but the premise of this is that Evelyn Hardcastle, is murdered on this day, and the main character wakes up in 8 different bodies on 8 different days, or on the same day over and over again, but he lives the day from different vantage points. I always do a terrible job of explaining this, but that's essentially the premise. Really awesome premise, really interesting storyline. I just found myself like enthralled in it while I was reading it, but I never wanted to pick it up when I wasn't reading it. Whereas like The Chain, for instance, if I put it down, I was like, okay, well, I want to know what happens next. And I just didn't feel that way with this one, but I know that's an unpopular opinion. A lot of people really like it. The next book that I read for the Tarot Readathon was, I don't remember the tarot cards that I drew for these, but again, the vlog is linked. But the prompt was a book that you've been meaning to get to. And for this, I read Horizontal Rest by Russin, which my boyfriend actually has borrowed now, so I don't have it to show you. But it is an independently published novella, again. And it's by the guy who's in Title Fight, which is why I bought it. I talk about this every time I talk about that book. I love the band Title Fight, so I thought, why not pick up his book? And it was pretty good. It was like a slice of life, existentialist, contemporary type thing. We're following Graham Mercy, who just graduated Columbia, and he doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life, but it just follows him over this long weekend, and he's at a convention for this organization that his family is a part of. And so it's just different things keep happening to him, and it's just sort of his like thought processes about things. I gave this book 3 stars. I did think it was interesting. I definitely didn't love it, but I think if you like Jack Kerouac or like Catcher in the Rye, or like existentialist theory and stuff like that, I think you would really enjoy this. It was a little high level for me, a little pretentious for me. I read a lot of genre fiction because I like genre fiction, so it's not like that at all. But I do think it offered up a lot of really interesting ideas, and the character Graham Mercy is very purposefully pretentious. It's not just like the author is pretentious, therefore the character is pretentious, if that makes sense. The next book that I read for that vlog was Melmoth by Sarah Perry, which is a like gothic contemporary with a bit of a historical aspect. There's kind of a book within a book thing going on here because the main character, Helen Frankel, is working as an English translator in Prague, and the whole time that she's like sort of running from something in her past, but you don't know really what it is. And then there's this myth of Melmoth that someone who she's friends with in Prague has found these letters that basically detail people's experiences running into Melmoth. So some of the story is told in flashbacks as Helen Frankel is reading the letters, if that makes sense. This was a really interesting premise. It's very slow paced, very atmospheric. I gave this one 3 stars. Again, are you sensing a theme? But I didn't dislike this book by any means. I just felt like it was kind of slow, and I just didn't get as much out of it as I would have liked to. The ending was really good. I will say the ending of this book was really good because up until then I guess it was still a 3-star read, but it was more like a 3.5 because of the ending, but I just don't think this is really the type of thing that's going to stick with me very much. And then the last book that I read for that blog was The Line Becomes a River by Francisco Cantu, which is a memoir about a former Border Patrol agent on the US-Mexico border. And it's divided into 3 parts, and then in each part there's like little vignettes. The first part, he is just starting out as a Border Patrol agent and very green to the world. Like, I think he's like 22, and he's just thinking about like, he's explaining to his mom why he wanted to do this and like what it means to him, and then he's detailing like early on stories of being a field agent. In the second part, he gets moved to a desk job with the Border Patrol, and he talks about sort of the struggles that he still has with some of the things he did as a field agent. And then in the third part, he is no longer working for the Border Patrol, but he has a friend / coworker that he works with now who is having some immigration issues, and he talks about, I guess, Border Patrol and foreign policy from that angle. This is a really interesting book. It's pretty short. It's only like 250 pages. And so if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would highly, highly, highly recommend this. Very impactful. I gave this 5 stars. It did make me cry, but it's not hard to make me cry. So, but yes, I would highly recommend this one. I did start this other book for Summerween, but I didn't finish it until I was actually in the middle of the tarot readathon. So that is Salem's Lot by Stephen King. This is the book that I gave 2 stars this month. I did not like it. I trudged through it. I just find that so many of Stephen King's premises are much more interesting than the actual books are. This one is about a writer who returns to this small town in Maine, and there's a haunted house there, or something has happened in this house, and there's vampires in the town. That's essentially like the whole plot. Things happen from there, but this suffered from a lot of things that Stephen King's books that I've read have suffered from, which is that the female characters suck. The male characters, he has like 3 archetypes of characters that he uses over and over again. And the biggest one is like the male writer returning to his hometown. Like, that's just such a, like, I don't know. It kind of bothers me to read the same thing over and over again. Also, Stephen King has this really interesting habit of like consistently talking about women's bodies in a really derogatory way. And when I read stuff physically, I can like skim those sections, and so it doesn't bother me as much. But I listened to this as an audiobook, and so every time someone's nipples were described, I was just like, I'll listen to something else because I can't handle this right now. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed by that one. I wanted to love it. I've heard really good things about it, but ultimately it just, nothing about it really captivated me, and I had so many things that I disliked about it. So another book that I listened to on audio is a collection of short stories by Leslie Nneka Arimah, I think is how her name is pronounced. And she is the author who was born in the UK, but was raised partially in Nigeria. So I don't know if she considers herself British or Nigerian. A question for someone else. But What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky is the book. I don't know if I said the title, but it's a collection of short stories, and most of them follow women and girls, and it's a lot of relationships with their families, or relationships with their societies, and just like trauma and grief. Most of them are contemporary stories, just like about day-to-day life, but a couple of them have a little bit of a speculative twist, with a little bit of magical realism in there, which I really, really enjoyed. I just thought this collection of short stories was so good. I listened to this on a drive, so I sat down and just listened to it in one go. And I laughed, I cried, like I felt so connected with the characters in each of the stories. And I think short stories can sometimes be really difficult to succeed with, because you have to create a cast of characters that the reader cares about. And you have to have a plot that is complex enough to be interesting, but also simple enough to be wrapped up in only a handful of pages. And I think she did that wonderfully with each of these. So I would highly recommend this for fans of short stories. I'm gonna drink some water because I can hear myself going a little hoarse. The next book that I read was actually my favorite book of the month, and that is Letters to the Lost by Brigid Kemmerer, which was recommended to me by my friend Patience from college. I loved this book. It's a YA contemporary about a girl whose mother has died. And her way of coping with this is by writing her mom letters and leaving them on her mom's grave. And then a boy from her school finds one of her letters, reads it, and responds to it. But he doesn't know who she is, and she doesn't know who he is. So they start like writing letters back and forth to each other, basically, to comfort each other with the like traumatic experiences that they've both been through and the grief that they're both living with. But also what I really loved about this book is you get to see them interact in real life, like outside of the letters, and they don't know who each other are. So you also get to watch them like you get to watch them in real life develop feelings for each other, kind of, but you also get to witness them like writing letters and really trusting each other. I think concepts like this can sometimes get a little frustrating, but the pacing of this was done so well that it felt like everything happened right when it should have. And I really loved it. It made me cry multiple times. I really felt for the characters. I don't remember their names now, which is not a great sign, and this, I guess the male main character is definitely one of those like gruff exterior but soft on the inside, which I've mentioned a lot of times is like my ultimate male love interest like character. Like that's what I want everyone to have. So I was really stoked with this one. I loved it. And then the last book was another pleasant surprise. I listened to the third book in the Ember and the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir, A Reaper at the Gates. This is a YA fantasy series. Obviously, I'm not going to go too far into what has happened and what happens in this book because it would spoil other books, but I will just say I gave this one 5 stars. So we're back on track. If you've not been here before, I gave the first book in this series 5 stars, then immediately read the second book and gave it 3 stars and was so disappointed. But I really loved the third book. I like where things are going, and I found the character that bothered me for the first and second books is getting better, and she's becoming my favorite character, which is really interesting. This book also has one of my favorite villains, because I think she's so scary. But this series, since I don't really think I said at all what it was about, it's basically set in a fantasy world that's inspired by Rome, I think. And the people who are in charge are the marshals, and they are this like militaristic society. There's this school called Blackcliff, which is the military academy where you go to train to become a mask, which is like a warrior. It's like the top military rank you can sort of be, like the most intense military person you can kind of be in this world. And our main character, Elias, actually goes to Blackcliff, but he's feeling really like bad about what the Empire is doing to the scholars. And the scholars are the people who are enslaved and who are at the bottom of the totem pole. And Laia is a young girl who is a scholar, and she joins the rebellion at the beginning of the first book and is sent as an undercover slave in Blackcliff, where she meets Elias, and they sort of like bond over some things. So it's really interesting for that aspect, but also the story obviously has moved on from there. So it's really interesting. There's a lot of morally gray characters, and what I loved about the third book is so many things are revealed that are just like I feel like it was like bang, bang, bang at the end of the book where things just kept happening and I wasn't expecting them. And I listened to this as an audiobook like on my way to and from work, and so there were multiple times that I was sitting in my car and I was like, oh my god, and then I had to like go into my office. But it was great. Highly recommend the series. Can't wait to finish it. I'm probably going to do like a full-on review of the series maybe when I finish it, so let me know if you'd be interested in that. But I am really enjoying it. So very happy about that. But that's it. Oh, and I gave that one 5 stars. I don't know if I said. That's it. Those are the 11 books that I read in the month of July. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, and if you did, how you felt about them. Also, feel free to let me know what your best and worst book in July was. But if you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to, you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel because I do post 2 new videos every single week, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!